And folks, welcome to our special Facebook Live edition of the ECAC Bowl discussion. I am Frank Rossi, being joined by James Baker. We're going to have a couple special guests in a moment. We're going to review the 4 ECAC Bowl pairings that were just announced at ECAC Sports' different media platforms, including Facebook Live. And if you want to see that original broadcast, it is available on ECAC Sports' Facebook page right now. I can confirm because I was just there and saw that. But James...
Yeah.
Let's not give away the bowls for those that want to watch this fresh or learn about them fresh, but we have some exciting pairings coming on here or to be discussed. And why don't we also introduce our partners in crime in this discussion as we go into this.
Yeah, we got a dynamic duo of Emory Hunt, who is the founder of footballgameplan.com, covers the NFL, college football, and then our old friend and new dad, Seth Cantor, who's done broadcasts for Ivy League football, and is it the Boulders that you cover in minor league baseball there, Seth? But you're getting back to your roots, doing some Division III football at the ECAC Bowl games this weekend down at the University of Delaware. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having us. It's definitely an exciting slate of games. Looking forward to chatting about it with you.
You know, you're more than just a voice for the Boulders, Seth. Come on, what's your full title over there?
Oh, boy, giving me way too much credit. Well, assistant general manager. I'm also on CBS Radio, shameless self-plug, and I do St. Francis basketball. But it all got started, guys. It all got started at the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and I wouldn't be where I am without them. So I'm happy to see them get into the Clayton Chapman Bowl.
Let's talk about that. That's going to be the first one we talk about, guys. This year, tell fans that are new to this, it's a 4-bowl structure. It used to be 6, but there were some complaints about the early game on Friday and the late game on Sunday, and that is why it was kind of dealt with in a different way this year, and allows, in my opinion, more prime matchups ultimately to be had here. You don't have to spread the wealth nearly as much when you're only dealing with 8 teams instead of 12 teams at the end of the day. So the first one that's coming up here to me is a prime storyline bowl at the very least. So let's bring it up on screen, and it is the Clayton Chapman Bowl. It is going to be the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy versus Buffalo State. U.S. Merchant Marine Academy comes in 5-4, 4-3 in the new MAC, and Buffalo State is 6-4, 3-4 in the Empire 8. And Merchant Marines fresh from an ESPN 3 date against the Coast Guard Academy that they won, guys. This one really lines up in an interesting fashion with that triple option offense against a Buffalo State team that was just all over the place, up and down and all around this season, it seemed like. But, Jerry Boyes has that team usually pretty focused for a postseason berth of some sort, and I'm not going to be surprised to see a really competitive game here. What do you guys think?
Yeah, again, defense is going to be – they're going to have their hands full because they're facing an option attack, and that's the unique part about it is that when you have a team that's so athletic and really just want to get after the quarterback and play downhill, they're going to have to play discipline, which means they're going to have to play a slower game, a more assignment-sound game, and that's what is so frustrating when you're trying to game plan against that option attack and playing against it defensively. I've been on both sides where you've seen players defensively just get so frustrated within the game because they can't figure it out. And just when you think you haven't figured out, the other side makes adjustments and it's a touchdown. So it's going to be a great game. I love when we have a contrast style.
You know, guys, there are a couple of things here that stand out to me, being familiar with the program. Obviously, 2 veteran head coaches. You have Mike Toop, kind of reinvented this Merchant Marine Academy team and Ed Jerry Boyes. So that's the first layer to this. But, I remember the Merchant Marine Academy back in 2004 when I started. They ran more of a pro set offense. Mike Toop came in, and it wasn't really working for them, so they changed things up. He went to the option. They're a run-heavy team now, and ever since he's done that, they've become a more competitive group, so it's nice to see the reward at the end of the line for them right here.
JB, that Bryce Moore as quarterback has had a couple downs throughout the last couple of seasons, but many, many more ups, and one of which was this weekend, obviously, in that Secretary's Cup game. He looks to be kind of that difference maker that's probably going to help decide this type of game.
Well, either him or maybe the other quarterback, Kyle Hoppe from Buffalo State. When you look at this from a matchup perspective, it's interesting because the one team's strengths goes directly at the other team's kind of weakness. Buff State has struggled with stopping teams from rushing the football. They've been giving up more than 4 yards per carry, and the Merchant Marine, when they have lost, have typically done so to teams with strong quarterback play. And Kyle Hoppe is thrown for 12 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. He's completing almost 50% of his passes. He averages almost 240 passing yards a game, and that is definitely an area that has bitten the Mariners in the past. So this game, to me, guys, I think you better be prepared for a track meet. It's going to be one of those 45 to 42, lots of offense coming in this one, I think.
Kyle Hoppe was, I think, responsible 2 weeks ago against Hartwick, I want to say, with a touchdown with about 10 seconds left in that game to win that game. So both quarterbacks, no strangers to cardiac finishes, and if this one comes down to a one-possession game, get the pacemaker ready because the cardiac finish may be coming up one more time. Any final thoughts on this one before we go to bowl number 2?
You know, it's interesting. I remember being at the Merchant Marine Academy. Again, I'm a little biased because I covered them for so many years. But, yeah, I know they have their weight restrictions there and they have certain limitations. But we always talk to the opponents, and I know, Frank, you were part of this too, having been on the Union side when they played each other in the past. One thing the opponents would always say about the United States Merchant Marine Academy as a Federal Service Academy, those defenders, they hit the hardest of any team they ever dealt with. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as well.
It hasn't changed. I'll tell you, I've gone down with Jaden Daly to call a number of those games with him, and it always amazes me. The size may not be there, but like you said, the hitting is hard, and it's football, true and true right there. So let's go to the second bowl, which is on Saturday, the first of the day on Saturday, the ASA I think it's Bushnell Bowl, and that is
Bushnell, yeah.
It's going to be the Muhlenberg Mules, and you guys chronicled in your discussion earlier the loss of their head coach and everything else that's been going on around that program. And
again for Duke, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. It's amazing to see. To get redemption here is going to be a huge deal if they are able to do it because they should have probably finished 8-2 with a minute 24 left in that game. They took a knee to run out the clock with only one timeout left by Case Western Reserve. And then they end up with an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, stop the clock, and Case uses their timeout. A blocked punt in for a touchdown ensues. They get a field goal on the other end, but they end up in overtime and losing in overtime. So really a nightmarish end to a season. So you got to feel, you know, respectful for the fact that Carnegie Mellon gets another chance here to re-end their season in a different way. But Muhlenberg's got a lot to play for here, playing for Duke, as James said. How do you think this plays out from the football angle? Let's get away from the storylines for a second, but on the football angle, how does it play out?
Yeah, don't let the sophisticated dog with the nice scarf and the logo fool you. Carnegie Mellon is outstanding physically. I think when you look at how they're built and what they're able to do, it's going to be outstanding because you have a team that can line up and spread you out and attack vertically. But they are really lining up to run downhill. They're spreading out those wide receivers to neutralize the box and play a downhill game with their outstanding tailback, Sam Benger. And so when you look at what they can do defensively, you know, we've seen teams like this before. I did a game where Lafayette was driving down the field in overtime against Bucknell and threw a 95-yard pick six to lose that game in overtime. So that's a brutal way to lose. Carnegie Mellon lost a brutal game last week against Case Western Reserve. So they're going to come in ready to play this ball game. Obviously, teams want to get a win before you go into the off season. They're really going to want to get a win after the way they lost that game against a rival.
Yeah. And just like the Merchant Marine Buff State game, it's sort of strength on strength. You have Muhlenberg brought Corey David down to be the defensive coordinator from he had previously been at Hobart, and the Mules have done an excellent job on defense, holding teams. Looks like to under 100 yards rushing per game. And then on the flip side, you have with Carnegie Mellon, as you said, Sam Benger, one of the best running backs in all of Division III. Should be a very exciting matchup to see how these two teams face off.
You know, Seth, go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We've seen Sam Benger before, and I'll let Emory take it from here. But just his ability to take over a game, that's going to be a very tough task for Muhlenberg. But if they're able to do so, it's going to be interesting to see where else Carnegie Mellon can go.
Yeah, again, don't sleep on their passing. They have a tremendous wide receiver. And they're one of the few teams at Division III to have legit 2 pro prospects. Now, whether that's whatever level, but they do have 2 pro prospects. And it'll be interesting to see the Mules match up because I do love their offensive line, one of the more consistent units in Division III.
Seth, I was going to bring up your memory of the Centennial Conference teams. Union used to play Muhlenberg, and they are Centennial Conference teams just in general, even beyond just Johns Hopkins, they seem to get the top billing because of their playoff success over the years, or ability to get into the playoffs, let alone all that. But Muhlenberg and every other Centennial Conference team, they're just a gritty brand of football in that Pennsylvania Conference. You saw it with even Susquehanna during their small time in the Liberty League and whatnot. We saw that, and they went into the Centennial Conference eventually. But that's just a tough conference to deal with.
Yeah, Frank, it's interesting that you say that. The two things that I remember about covering those games: tough, rugged, power football. And, I told Emory before, the first game I ever covered, the United States Merchant Marine Academy playing at Muhlenberg, and I definitely remember that smash mouth brand of football, and it seems like not much has changed.
Let's go to bowl number 3. I think we've had 4 conferences already represented in the games we talked about here. I think 7 total out of the 8 positions will be represented by different conferences here. And here comes one that is actually a rematch of a conference game back a few years back. And an interesting story comes from it. The Scotty Whitelaw Bowl on Saturday at 5 p.m. The nightcap is the Salisbury Seagulls versus the Ithaca Bombers. And in some ways, the old stories go that the existence of Salisbury and Frostburg in the Empire 8 in the old days was the cause of Ithaca to decide to finally go to the Liberty League because the travel situations that existed back when. But these are 2 well-respected programs, and when this matchup used to occur, it used to be a top-notch type of matchup. So it's good to see it's back again at this point. And again, to bring up the records, it's 7-3 for Salisbury overall, 7-2 in the NJAC, versus Ithaca, 7-3 in the overall record, and 4-1 in the Liberty League, which is the best conference record of all the 8 teams that are here. They passed up an opportunity to rematch Cortland after the Cortica game was Saturday in the New York Bowl and end up with a prime matchup here. Union gets their slot instead in the New York Bowl versus Cortland, which maybe we shouldn't be talking about the other brand of bowls out there, but hey, it is what it is. It's a fact, and it's allowed Ithaca to come into this bowl game. Guys, this really is, I think, in the right spot in terms of a nightcap game, a primetime slot on a Saturday. This is the game to put there out of the 4 for prime football.
Absolutely. And again, we've said this throughout the entire broadcast: styles make fights. Triple option team that wants to pretty much work the passing game. They can run the football as well. But I do think when you have these 2 matchups and the way we last saw Salisbury last year in that bowl game against Carnegie Mellon, where they ran roughshod up. Because at the beginning of the game, we thought Carnegie Mellon actually had the balance needed to put pressure on the Seagulls. But after that first drive, we were like, okay, yeah, this is going to go expected and how we expect it to go. Whatever happened in adjustment period, in between that break, the Seagulls came out and just ran roughshod at Carnegie Mellon. So I'm excited to see this ball game because I know how good Ithaca is as a football team.
I'm glad to see Ithaca here. When I went to school there, guys, and over the course of the last several years we've been through this, Ithaca's never really declared for an ECAC bowl game. I think that was kind of the philosophy of the old coaching staff, whether it was to keep guys healthy for the following season. But, I'll say under Dan Swanstrom, the first-year head coach, they had a strong finish, and I think it's important as they built the chemistry within that program to actually be able to participate in a playoff game like this. And I think that's something that's going to serve them well going forward. To have a tough matchup like this, I think there's a lot of juice behind it. And knowing the Ithaca College alums, I think they're going to travel well, and I think there's going to be a good showing down there.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for Ithaca. I mean, they are technically the co-champions of the Liberty League with the 4-1 mark. They obviously didn't get the Pool A, but they are still a championship caliber football team playing a championship caliber of defense. But boy, this young man, Wahib Nabi, the freshman quarterback, he set an Ithaca record last Saturday in Cortica, throwing for 6 touchdowns. This could be another one of those games that could be a lot of scoring, a lot of offense, but both teams have excellent defenses as well. This will probably be the most physical matchup, I think, of the weekend. And it's kind of a homecoming for Coach Swanstrom, given his years at Penn and prior to that to Johns Hopkins. I'm sure he's got a lot of recruits or head coaches in high school on the phone. Hey, come to Delaware, come check us out. And so I think this is a win-win for the Bombers, and I think it's a great matchup for the ECAC.
You could call these the Seth Cantor bowl games in some ways. He's got that connection to Merchant Marine, to Ithaca. We're going to hear some more connections, maybe Stevenson or Alpha.
See how objective he can be, Frank. He's got some rooting interests here. I don't know. Emory, you're going to have to keep him honest, all right?
Cantor invitation that we got going on.
Well, what's ironic about this, guys, and I had no say in the selection process at all. I'm just a ringer coming in here to host the show. But, what I will say is for 1 year that I actually can't get down there and cover these games, the two schools that really were responsible for my starter, I'm not even going to get a chance to see them in person. So a little bit of irony there.
Great Delaware shootout we got going on.
In our first year of In the Huddle, I remember the clips, one clip in particular that made around the league at the time, now our Crunch Time segment, very popular, was one you were on the wrong side of, Seth, in the Susquecentennial, as they called it, down in Susquehanna. And it was Susquehanna basically getting come from behind with about 14 points in about, 10 seconds it felt like, or whatever it was. And you were as excited as anybody making the call. So I will vouch for Seth, despite the fact he's not going to be here this weekend. He is not a homer by any stretch of the imagination, and I give him credit for that. Guys, let's go to the final game here. This is the Sunday at noon game, and it is the James Lynaugh Bowl, and Stevenson is going to be going up against Alfred. And one of the things I like about these bowl matchups is that you will see matchups you will never otherwise see, probably, unless it is in a playoff format in some way, shape, or form. This is one of those situations. I can't ever remember this being played. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't remember this one being played ever. It's Stevenson at 6-4, 6-3 in the MAC versus Alfred 7-3 overall, 5-2 in the Empire 8. Empire 8 is the only conference with two teams represented. That's Buffalo State and Alfred. The rest are all singles: NUMAC, Centennial, PAC, NJAC, Liberty League, and MAC, which is Stevenson. This is going to be a very interesting game. These are two teams that really have had disappointing seasons based on the expectations coming into the season. I believe both teams were ranked in the D3Football.com top 25 preseason poll, and Stevenson just kind of fell off right away. Alfred took some time to fall off, then had a really challenging game, almost made the playoff field against Brockport, but both teams' quarterbacks get knocked out late in that game, but Brockport was much the better at the very end of it because of their defense. And I think it was Julius Misro with that huge interception of Alfred. But here's a chance for Alfred to get a little bit more redemption at the end of the day. But here's also a chance for Stevenson, with the record that they have, 6-4, to get that seventh win. I think for them would be huge, guys. How do you think this one plays out? Besides possibly very high scoring.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game for Alfred because Stevenson is a fairly new program, and they've taken full advantage of the fertile recruiting ground in the DMV area. And so they have a ton of talent, and they run a pro-style offense. So you're going to see a good, well-balanced offensive attack. They have a lot of size. And I know size is not a skill, but when you combine that size with the talent level that they have, you're going to see a really good Mustang football team. So if Alfred is not ready to play, they can get walked out of the stadium. On the flip side, Alfred has a ton of speed and a ton of athleticism on the perimeter, and that's something that Stevenson hasn't seen all season. When you have running backs, receivers, even quarterbacks that can get out there and run 4.6, run 4.5, you're going to put a lot of pressure on the defense. So if they're not ready to play as far as keeping their eyes on their assignments and staying in the game mentally from a game plan standpoint, they could get blown out too. So you're right, this game could be a high scoring one because it has a potential for that because of how these teams are built.
You guys mentioned something before, and the words I think you used were disappointing seasons. I remember when Alfred turned the corner back in 2001, I think that's when. I actually remember covering Ithaca's opener, and Alfred actually took it to the net game, and they had a terrific season. That really turned the corner for those guys. So it just shows how far this Alfred program has come, where you can actually sit here and say, yeah, they had a 7-3 record, 5-2 in the league, and it's a disappointing season.
One of my first exposures to them was like in 1996, 1997 when Union used to face them, and they were a shell of themselves compared to what they are today. You're absolutely right. JB, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, both of these teams were conference champions last season. Alfred was the Lambert Cup, so the award that the ECAC gives out to effectively the best team in the East region for Division III. So this is an important game for both programs from a pride perspective, I think, and it'll be an interesting matchup, especially with, and I don't know if you caught this, Frank, but Malik Fuentes from Alfred ran for almost 300 yards. They only attempted one pass against Hartwick, which is strange because Casey Boston was in the game. He's this quarterback. He rushed for 2 touchdowns. But normally a more open offensive set, they kind of just abandoned. Maybe they just figured out that the Hawks couldn't stop their running game. So I'm kind of curious to see what kind of offense we get out of the Saxons on Sunday.
Well, one thing I will add is we got a picture from our friend Chris Engel up at St. Lawrence before the Brockport-St. Lawrence game, and there was snow definitely on the field, and I wonder if Alfred didn't have a little bit of weather that played a role, even if it was before the game. Wet turf does not go well for the passing game necessarily, so maybe they felt forced to do what they did there. Guys, I'm going to put up all 4 games on the screen real quick here. And I know that, Emory, you would not pick your favorite of the 4 necessarily during the broadcast, the main broadcast. But come on now. If you had to play a favorite here, give me which one of these 4, the Chapman, Bushnell, Whitelaw, or the Lynaugh Bowl, that you think is going to produce the best overall matchup, if you had to pick one.
I think I love carnage. So I think it's going to be the Whitelaw Bowl between Salisbury and Ithaca, because Ithaca, it seems like you guys talked about, this is their first time of, okay, yeah, we're going to go to the ECAC and we're going to play in this bowl game. The Seagulls are coming up with their option tag, and you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get a running game, first, second, and third down with a timely play action pass that no one will be ready for. Somebody's going to be wide open. It's going to be a touchdown. So I think this game is going to start off slow, maybe in the first quarter and a half, but then by the time the second and third quarter hits, we're going to be in the midst of a 35-35 type shootout. So I'm excited to see that one. I think that one has the potential for a fun game. It's going to be a fun watch, and one that's going to be fun to broadcast as well.
Seth, now I'm going to give a special rule to you on this one. In a game not featuring your alma mater, which of these games is the most competitive one, do you think? We'll put them back on the screen.
I got to tell you, I actually like the Carnegie Mellon game and the Muhlenberg game, and I'll tell you why. I think Sam Benjamin, terrific running back, he has the ability to take over a game against a powerful Muhlenberg defense. So you have 2 teams contrasting styles going up against each other in that way, and I think that's going to be the most fun one of the weekend. But like I said, I think there are a lot of great storylines here, some first-timers, a mix of new and old, and I think overall it's going to shape up to be a terrific weekend.
JB, not to be left out, go ahead. Pick one of those.
I'm gonna go for the. I think the Mustangs against the Saxons is going to be an interesting matchup, because normally, like you said, Frank, this wouldn't be a game that you'd get to see in the regular season. I think both teams have a lot to bring to bear. It should be a very competitive game on both sides of the ball. I mean, my heart is definitely rooting for the Mariners. It's nice to see them, back in the postseason for the first time in a long time, and they're great kids. We had a great interview with Jake Murphy a couple weeks ago before the Secretary's Cup game. So, you got to cheer for them on one hand. But, I'd probably say the finale, which I'm sure will be a great one for the ECAC D3 Football Fest.
Guys, we're going to have the split vote on this one through and through. I'm going to actually say the Merchant Marine Buffalo State game, and I was going to say it before you even said it, your picks on this one, because it's been 15 years since Merchant Marine has been in a postseason game. 2002 was the last time, and I think there's a certain specialness that comes with that. They had the pomp and circumstance of the Secretary's Cup game on ESPN3 on Saturday. There's a more pomp and circumstance coming here. Now, emotionally, they may be emotioned out from that game, and Seth, you've seen that happen over time, that they'll win that game, then lose against SUNY Maritime historically. The next week, it felt like it was just a common thing that would happen to them, even if they were better than that SUNY Maritime team. But I think here, at the end of the season, they're on the upswing. Buffalo State's kind of on an S-swing right now, and I think that's going to pose a really prime matchup overall, so we'll see what happens with it. Final thoughts, guys? We're going to part ways in a moment here, but the excitement level's got to be pretty high.
I have a question. I got a question for Emory and Seth. So how do we D3 football fans tune in to watch your games this weekend? And remember, if we go back to the board, Frank, we got Friday night at 7:30, Saturday at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m., and then the finale on Sunday at noon. How do we tune in to check these great matchups out?
Well, you can watch it on the ECAC network, ECAC All Access, through the ECAC website. Number of different ways on social media to follow as well. ECAC D3FB Fest at ECAC Sports as well. But it all starts with the ECAC network through the ECAC website at ECAC All Access. You can watch all the games. The PAC network does a tremendous job. It's a great production. Megan O'Brien, John Rollins, they do a terrific job here on the back end. They put a great production together, and that's where it all starts.
If you have any questions, you just call Seth on the cell phone. 201.
I've got his number. Yeah.
Wow. If the calls have just started rolling in. Okay, before we give out more private information, we are going to end this broadcast. We're going to end it actually with that front slate or final slate that we were just talking about one more time. But we will just remind you folks that we are going to have some exciting games coming up this weekend. The ECAC did a great job. Thanks to John and Megan for helping put all this together with us. And guys, great job on your show earlier and for helping us out right now. So take care, Emory and Seth, JB. Folks will want to stay tuned throughout the week for more coverage. We're actually going to have some on-the-road segments related to the NCAA playoffs as well this week. So you'll want to see or stick around to see some of that as the week progresses. Guys, thanks.
Thank you, guys. I just want to say you guys have really come a long way with the program. I remember when you had an audio link on Blog Talk Radio, and now it's become this. And you guys really do a terrific job. You put a lot of effort and time into this, and it shows. So great job on the season.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that. And continued luck on not just your career, but your family as well. It looks like you're doing a great job there being a daddy at this point. So congratulations.
He doesn't look tired enough to me, Frank. I don't know. He actually looks like he's getting enough sleep.
We'll go back. There we go. We'll show the bags of the eyes, and we'll put the games back up on the screen. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again.